Wait for me, because I'll be coming back to the Lyric Theatre in the West End, and often. Oh my god, Hadestown. Welcome back to my theatre-themed YouTube channel, or hello to you if you're listening on podcast platforms. My name is Mickey Jo, and I am obsessed with all things theatre, including one of my more recent musical theatre loves and discoveries, the musical Hadestown, written and composed by singer-songwriter Anais Mitchell, now Tony Award winner for her work on Hadestown, an interpretation of Greek mythology, juxtaposing the ancient Greek mythological tragedy of Orpheus and Eurydice with that of Hades and Persephone, but using a contemporary Americana folk Louisiana jazz score in which to do so, and talking about contemporary issues within the world, talking about climate change, talking about political challenges. All in all, using classical storytelling in a production directed by Rachel Chavkin to teach a modern audience how to go on coping in an increasingly difficult world. That being just one of the many lessons we can take from Hadestown. What I need to tell you is that there's a brand new cast which has been announced for the West End production, with the show having returned to London at the Lyric Theatre in February of last year. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, because across the next 5 weeks there will be 3 different sets of casts performing Hadestown in London. If you have no idea why, I'm going to explain it to you in today's video. We may also talk a little bit about Hadestown's other global productions. They're set to open imminently in Australia. There's also recently been a principal cast change over on Broadway, where the show recently celebrated its 5th anniversary at the Walter Kerr Theatre, having won the 2019 Tony Award for Best New Musical. And let us not forget that Hadestown is heading to Amsterdam in the Netherlands later this year, this summer in fact. I'm very intrigued about that production, and I wonder if this current London cast change could tell us a little something about the cast we might be expecting to see in Amsterdam. I have no reason to believe that's the case, but I'm going to speculate wildly. Anyway, let's get on with it. Let's talk about Hadestown casting in the West End. So I am going to talk about the cast which has just been announced, but before I do, I feel I need to clear something up a little bit, because currently Hadestown has a certain set of performers performing in the show until the 9th of February. This is principally the show's second London cast, with some cast members having stayed on from the first London cast. I'll explain. If you were to go and see this show at the Lyric Theatre in the West End with the current cast between now and the 9th of February, this Sunday, here is who you will see. Playing the roles of Orpheus and Eurydice are Dylan Wood and Madeline Charlemagne. Now, Dylan was new to the show when the prior Orpheus, Donal Finn, left the production back in August, along with the first Eurydice, Grace Hodgett Young. But Madeline, who took over, was not as new to the show, because she had been an original Fate back in February of last year and had understudied Eurydice, so she just got bumped up from Eurydice cover to principal Eurydice alongside Dylan. Something else you should know about Dylan, he is Scottish, which means, and I haven't seen him perform yet, I just have this on good authority, every time Orpheus says yes or yeah in the show, Dylan instead says aye, because if you didn't know, Hadestown encourages performers to perform the show using their own native accents. We've had English accents, American accents, regional British accents, Irish and Scottish, Trinidadian. Very exciting, because it makes it sound, and I've said this before, like a story that isn't tied to one specific place. It feels timeless and it feels beyond geography. And as someone who personally struggles with geography, I love that about this production. And that, I think, is also one of my favorite things about Hadestown. You have all of these different voices, all of these different vocal ranges represented in the musical theatre world, where increasingly everything is belted higher and higher and higher. Yay for bass and alto representation. You also have characters who are played interchangeably by performers of different gender identities. You have performers using their own native accents, transplanting these characters across the globe, making it feel like a story that could be happening anywhere, and coupling that creative decision with the diversity that we see in Hadestown's casting offers us really thrilling new interpretations of the show each time they bring in a new cast and each time you go back to see it. And you have these performers bringing all of these exciting new dynamics and qualities to the material. These different Celtic Orpheuses work so well because there's such a natural poetry to their song delivery of these songs. Melanie La Barrie as Hermes in her own Trinidadian accent is so powerful to me. And full credit where it's due, this is only the latest in a string of roles that Melanie La Barrie has, over her career, created or recreated in the West End using a Trinidadian accent. Before it became popular to, in the likes of Six, have performers using their own accents, you had Mel doing this in Mary Poppins and Anne Juliet and Matilda. She has been knocking against the door of this idea for a long time in the industry, and finally finally now it's open. Anyway, Melanie La Barrie continues in the role of Hermes until this coming Sunday. My favorite Hermes I have ever seen, and I think I've seen about 5 of them. She is joined by other original cast members of this London production, Ali Daniel and Bella Brown, as 2 of the Fates. The trio being completed by Francesca Daniela Baker, who replaced Madeline Charlemagne when she became Eurydice. Finally, there is our Hades and Persephone, currently played by Trevor Dion Nicholas, seen in the West End's Hamilton and Aladdin, and more recently Next to Normal, as well as Rachel Tucker, seen of course in Wicked and We Will Rock You, and more recently in Sunset Boulevard as the guest performer alongside Nicole Scherzinger. Now, this was very exciting and interesting casting when it was announced towards the end of last year, when Gloria Neitri and Zachary James left the production, because with both of them, but particularly with Rachel, it felt like they were moving in a very different direction for the character, and I am hoping to try and get to see the show before Sunday, principally to see Rachel bringing what I can only assume is a very different kind of an energy and a vocal quality to Persephone. Now, here at MickeyJoTheatre Enterprises, we celebrate ensemble members, swings, and understudies, and you will also currently see in the cast, if they are on stage and not backstage waiting to save the show, Lauren Azania, Tiago Don Bamberger, the brilliant Beth Hinton-Lever, the wonderful Waylon Jacobs, Christopher Short, Lucinda Buckley, Winnie Herbert, Raisha Higgs, Miriam Niarco, and Simon Oscarson, rounding out the current West End company. So that's the current cast. What's happening next Tuesday? Between the 11th of February and the 9th of March, this period of 4 weeks, there is going to be a specific cast in place for that limited time because the show's original Broadway principal stars, also seen pre-Broadway at London's National Theatre, I should add, are going to be arriving in the West End playing those roles. People are very excited. I have tickets for their first performance and I am thrilled about it, principally so that it can be recorded. During this time, in fact, the dates have now been revealed when this is going to be happening, they are going to be filming a pro shot, a professional video recording of the show. We don't know when this will necessarily become available and how it will be available, whether it's going to be on a particular streaming platform, whether it's going to be released in cinemas, but they're making a Hadestown pro shot and they're doing it with the original Broadway leads. That is enough to get us excited. The cast that has just been announced today is the cast who are going to be taking over then from Tuesday the 11th of March. Fun fact, I was so excited and overwhelmed when they announced Patrick and Eva and Reeve and André and Amber that I booked tickets for Tuesday the 11th of March instead. For me and multiple friends, I booked like 6 tickets in the second row because there were other booking errors and things happening that day. I did manage to get them refunded when I immediately realized that I was a fool, but I also blame the calendar because only between February and March could you make that kind of a mistake, because in most other months, Tuesday the 11th of one month would not be Tuesday the 11th of the next month. It only happens because there are 28 days in February. Anyway, this is not why you clicked on this video. That's my inner maths teacher coming out. I apologize. From the 11th of February until the 9th of March, the original Broadway principals, who again did it at the National before they went to Broadway, before anyone comes for me in the comments section, are going to be coming to London to recreate their performances in order for the show to be filmed during their run. But also, they're here for 4 weeks and they've already sold it out. People are very excited about this. They are, of course, Reeve Carney as Orpheus, Eva Noblezada as Eurydice, Amber Gray as Persephone, Patrick Page as Hades, and André de Shields as Hermes. The Fates for this run, and by extension for the pro shot recording, will be Ali Daniel, Bella Brown, and Madeline Charlemagne, who is, if you remember, our current Eurydice, who started as one of this trio of Fates, who will be returning to the trio of Fates for the 4 weeks and for the recording, which I think is a smart move because you need a real sense of brilliant tight harmony between those Fates, both in terms of the obvious vocal performance and in terms of the characterization and the acting as well. For them to be doing it alongside the Broadway performers who have been with these roles and developed these roles for many, many years, I think it's valuable to have the three who rehearsed together when Rachel Chavkin was building the return for the London production. We have 4 company members credited to the Workers' Chorus. Current company members Lauren Azania, Tiago Don Bamberger, Waylon Jacobs, and Christopher Short. Lucinda Buckley will be staying with the show as a swing. Francesca Daniela Baker, currently one of the Fates who took over for Maddie, will also be a swing, presumably covering the Fate track. I don't know if Madeline is then going to go back to being first cover Eurydice for Eva again. Winnie Herbert, Raisha Higgs, and Miriam Niarco, meanwhile, staying as swings. I assume Tiago might then be the only Orpheus cover in the building because Simon Oscarson is no longer listed from the 11th of February, but there's every possibility over a 4-week period that none of the Broadway principals are going to miss any performances. But, you know, people never plan to, and it's not an indictment on their commitment or their talent if they do. Life happens. And I'll be honest, the weather in London at the moment is not fantastic, but if they're coming from New York, the weather there is also kind of dreadful. It's really just very cold everywhere. It's a lot like Hadestown, I'll be honest. Anyway, all of this to say, that is who you are going to see if you see the show prior to the 11th of March. I think we sometimes take it for granted that everyone knows exactly what's going on in all of these shows and can follow all of these press releases and announcements, but with this one right now, with so many announcements for Hadestown, I think it is confusing. So here then are today's newly announced cast members who will be taking over from Tuesday the 11th of March. Desmonda Cathabel as Eurydice, Victoria Hamilton-Barritt as Persephone, Chris Jarman as Hades, Cedric Neal as Hermes, and returning to / continuing in the role of Orpheus, Dylan Wood, who, if you'll remember, is playing it right now, but is going to be taking a nice little month off while Reeve Carney comes back and does it. Oh, maybe Dylan is going to be secretly in the building as an Orpheus standby. I bet you that's what's happening. The Fates will be played by Ali Daniel, continuing for a second year, the only principal cast member from the full first year returning for another, along with Lauren Ray and Melanie Bright. Now, I'm very excited that Dylan is returning. I have heard terrific things about him in the role. Hopefully I get to see him this week, but if I don't, then I'm very pleased that I have more opportunities to see him in the West End. Like I've mentioned, I love a Celtic Orpheus. But Desmonda Cathabel opposite him is just as exciting. That is thrilling casting. If you're wondering why you may be familiar with Desmonda, she was one of the contestants of last summer's series Mamma Mia, I Have a Dream. Was it last summer or was it the summer before? I evidently can't still recall our last summer because I think it was actually an entire year before that. Wow. Gimme a calendar, am I right? Anyway, even before that aired, she was an exciting rising star in shows like From Here to Eternity, in Miss Saigon at the Sheffield Crucible. Right after the show aired, she was Jasmine in the UK tour of Aladdin, which is only just now finishing. And this is going to be, I believe, her West End debut, and what an exciting role to do it in. As a leading lady in Hadestown, she shared a little bit on her own social media today that Flowers, one of Eurydice's songs in the show, is actually what she sang at her Royal Academy of Music Agents Showcase performance. She sounds great doing it. We know she has a fantastic voice. We have heard her in many concerts, but I'm also really intrigued about the acting, performance, and characterization she's going to bring to Eurydice, because you do see slight variation in the way that people interpret these roles. Grace Hodgett-Young, who's the only one I've ever seen do it in London since they did it at the National, brought this really hard-edged resilience and toughness to the role. From having seen Desmonda on stage, my anticipation is that she might bring a slightly softer and more vulnerable quality to Eurydice. There's plenty of that to highlight in the material as well. And that's kind of closer to what Eva has always done with the role, I think. Her Eurydice being someone who always puts up a tough front, but ultimately isn't. This is also great casting news because there was a little bit of a moment of criticism when Hadestown announced the first West End cast for the Lyric Theatre, and it transpired that it wasn't going to contain any Asian or South Asian specifically representation. But also, I enjoy Desmonda going from playing Princess Jasmine in Aladdin to playing Eurydice in Hadestown. If we really boil it down, I feel like they're very similar people who want very similar things. Sure, Jasmine is singing about looking for a life beyond these palace walls, and Eurydice is saying to herself, I wonder if I'll find job satisfaction in hell, but really they're after the same goal. Carrying on then, Cedric Neal is going to be playing Hermes. I heard it through the grapevine that Cedric Neal was in contention among the last few people in contention, maybe even the last 2 people in contention to play the role of Hermes when they were auditioning for the first cast at the Lyric Theatre. He is another one who has been making very exciting moves in the theatre industry of late. He is currently seen, until this weekend, in Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 at the Donmar Warehouse, playing Balaga, bringing a lot of fun and his traditional vocal brilliance to that role. He is going to sound outstanding. He may be the most audacious vocalist, up there alongside Lilias White, I should say, that I will ever have seen as Hermes, because Cedric Neal has the most remarkable voice. He was, of course, Olivier Award nominated last year for his performance as Nicely Nicely Johnson, his show-stopping performance in the British Theatre's immersive revival of Guys and Dolls. He's also just a lovely man, a brilliant talent. I think he's going to bring something really special to this. And again, we're going to have a variety of accents because, if you don't know, he's American, and I assume he'll perform this with his own American accent. Desmonda also, now that I think about it, doesn't really speak with an English accent, so this is going to sound great. On to Hades and Persephone then, who I think are increasingly my favorite part of any production of Hadestown. They're going to be played by Chris Jarman, who I have seen on stage before and who I think is best known for performing in the very successful long-running play that is currently at the Palace Theatre. You know which one I'm talking about. No, I'm not going to say it. But he has also appeared in musicals before, such as The Book of Mormon and Sister Act, and more recently as Dr. Dillamond in Wicked at the Apollo Victoria Theatre in London. Thrilled to see him back on stage in another musical and alongside Victoria Hamilton-Barritt as Persephone, who, let me tell you, is going to be a force in this role. I'm sure this is one of the names that I've spoken about before in terms of like dream casting for Persephone. She's been a Daniela in The Heights. She's been a Diana Morales in A Chorus Line. She recently is best known for having been the stepmother in Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella before it was bad, arguably. She's played scene-stealing villainous roles over the last few winters in shows like Bronco Billy at the Charing Cross, Hex at the National Theatre. But this is a thrilling and substantial West End homecoming for her. And, you know, she's a fantastic comedic actress. She will chew up that scenery, but getting to see her return to something with real depth and heart and sincerity and tragedy at its core, those Act 2 scenes with her and Hades trying to rekindle a very broken marriage and relationship and discover what it was that once made them fall in love with each other, that I already know is going to be wonderful. But her Our Lady of the Underground is going to be a moment. That is going to be a whole moment on stage at the Lyric, and, you know, she is reason enough, let me tell you. Book tickets now to see Victoria Hamilton-Barritt play Persephone. The whole cast is great. The show is great. Book tickets for that. Finishing the principal cast, we of course have our fates. I mentioned Melanie Bright and Lauren Ray will be joining Ali Daniel, who is continuing. There is one little change because Ali Daniel, who was second cover Hermes, is now going to be first cover Hermes. That was Waylon Jacobs in the original company. I am very excited about this because I got to see the only day I think Ali has performed as Hermes. She had 2 performances. I don't think it happened again subsequently. That was the first day it was happening, and I dropped my plans for that evening and ignored the tickets I had already booked to go and see something else with friends, and I ran down Shaftesbury Avenue in the rain to go and get a last-minute ticket to see Ali go on that evening as Hermes. She was so good. I'm a huge fan of hers, and hopefully this means that she will have more in advance Hermes dates for the coming year. So if anyone else wants to go and see Ali Daniel as Hermes, then you can plan a trip in advance. As and when she reveals that, check on her socials, but don't bug her. That's weird. Don't do that. Wait for her to tell you. And then when she does, book tickets immediately. Thank me later. Then rounding out the ensemble, we have many new names and faces. In fact, I think it's only Lucinda Buckley who is staying on. We'll be joined by Femi Akinfolarin, Michelle Andrews, Ollie Bingham, Laura Delaney, and Sebastian Lim-Seat. They will be the workers. Lucinda is going to be a swing, as she currently is. I think Lucinda covers all 3 fates. Joined also by Juan Jackson, Oshin Nolan Power, Lindo Shinder, and Jasmine Triardi. I hugely apologize unreservedly if I have just butchered the pronunciation of any of your names. I cannot wait to see you all performing in Hadestown in the West End. So I am evidently thrilled about this casting. I do think it's very interesting that they haven't yet gone the Broadway route of bringing in people from slightly different entertainment backgrounds. It's not full Chicago stunt casting, like we're not bringing in NFL players and reality TV housewives, which I have nothing against for Chicago, by the way. That absolutely works, and I do like to see it. Now, Hadestown on Broadway has been bringing in a lot of TV actors. It's been bringing in a handful of, like, Broadway legends, but it's also, particularly in the casting for Persephone, really been dipping into the world of musicians and singers and friends and contemporaries of the show's writer Anais Mitchell. And I have been wondering if this was something we were going to start to see more of in the London production, but not for the moment, it seems, because this is very much casting that lives entirely in the prestige West End theatrical realm. These are theatre stars and theatre names, but it's a really robust cast of theatre stars combining exciting rising talent with these established veterans. It's a really solid cast. Do we take from that as well that the show is in a really secure and comfortable place, that they're not yet turning to like these other casting choices that might bring in people from, you know, different walks of life, people from outside of the musical theatre bubble, which is what that casting tends to do. We call it stunt casting. And it's not always a bad thing. It has given way to many exciting performances, and it brings a lot of of new people into the theatre, which I think ultimately is really important. This is going to be Hadestown's second year in the West End at the Lyric. Hopefully it goes on to a third year, a fourth year, and they can start to use some of these casting strategies then, perhaps. I'll admit, I was not 100% confident when Hadestown announced their West End return that they would get to even this point. I'd hoped the show would be successful here, but it's a really difficult theatrical climate for something that doesn't have huge name recognition TV stars or is based on a well-known IP. Like, what do London audiences know about Hadestown? Evidently, they've made it work, and there's more of an appetite for this show here than I thought, and I'm delighted. Now, I did mention the upcoming Dutch production in Amsterdam, and I call it a Dutch production because that's where it's happening, except it is going to be performed in English, which makes me wonder if they're going to be casting British performers. Just because we have more musical theatre performers here, more are trained here, more gravitate here because there is more work here, the West End is bigger, it does more, there are more opportunities in London and it's reasonably nearby. Not to say that there aren't any performers in the Netherlands, there are many talented performers there as well, but the fact that the show is going to be performed in English would make it very easy for the Hadestown producers to transport over some brand new or returning Hadestown stars. Could we see Melanie La Barrie playing Hermes again, but over in the Netherlands? Could we see Simon Oscarson playing Orpheus? Random ideas like this. Is Madeline Charlemagne not staying with the show because she's going to go and be Eurydice over there? It's something that they could do. They wouldn't be the only West End show with a nearby international production happening, because there is an English language version of Titanic, which will be starting quite soon in Paris, France, which I believe is also casting from the British talent pool. So I'm curious, I'm really hoping that there is representation of brilliant Dutch musical theatre stars in the Netherlands production of Hadestown, because I think that's probably what the fans would want, but I think we may also see some exciting options from the London production. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Anyway, that I think eventually brings me to the end of this little news update. I hope that this has made you as excited as I am about the Hadestown casting, the cast you can see right now, the cast you can see for the coming month, and the cast you can see thereafter. It's a world of brilliant options. There is so much for us to look forward to. There is the pro shot, there is the recent London album recording that they shared towards the end of last year that I reacted to here on my channel. Spring has come for the fans of Hadestown, and we are enjoying flowers aplenty. If you are someone who has never quite been interested in this show and is curious with the new cast change, perhaps a performer you really admire is going into the show and you want to be persuaded to go and see it, let us all know in the comments section down below, and I'm sure there are many people, myself included, who will be willing to share with you what they love about this musical. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening. Share all your thoughts in the comments down below about the current West End production of Hadestown, and I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day.
For 10 more seconds, I'm MickeyJoTheatre. Oh my god, hey, thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!